Ready, steady.
Hello, welcome to On Point. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Queller and Dr. Quartell from Dr. Q Longevity. And they are the creators of Dr. Q Fast. Through their program, they help reverse chronic disease, reverse aging, look and feel younger, and maintain a healthy weight. So, let's get started in introducing. Hello, Dr. Queller, and hello, Dr. Quartell. Welcome to On Point.
Hello.
Hi, thank you.
Yes. So tell me, where are you guys located right now, Dr. Queller and Dr. Quartell?
Well, I'm in North Jersey in Park Ridge, and David's in West Palm Beach, Florida, right?
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. So just to kind of
we're physicians, and we're also cousins.
Oh wow, wow, that's really interesting. How did you guys come up with the Q Fast?
And both of our last names end with Q.
So the naming was an
Quartell.
easy, the naming was the easiest part.
And for coincidentally, your last names start with Q.
Right.
And cousins. That's a very special, relationship bonding name, company merge. So so today we want to talk about your Dr. Q Fast. And I'm not an expert in fasting, but I've read about fasting or intermittent fasting and how fasting is beneficial for our health. So in lieu of that, would you explain to the listeners what your fasting, what your distinction of fasting is?
All right. Well, I'll start off. As far as fasting goes, the general concept is restricting calorie intake over a period of time. And this doesn't speak to all populations, but particularly the population in which we're now, the standard American diet, we tend to overconsume calorie. So the idea of reducing caloric intake has a tremendous value for maintaining and building better health. And fasting for periods of time beyond 24 hours, we tend to call a fast. And periods of time where we're not eating less than 24 hours, we tend to term as time-restricted eating. And the work that we do is to help people control the number of calories that are coming in, to help the body heal itself and create an environment within that gets rid of chronic disease and belly fat. That's one segment of what we do, but that's really the biggest segment of what we do.
Yeah,
fasting.
Yeah, fasting is abstaining from all food substances except for water, in an environment of rest. It's essentially turning on in the body an unfed state. And when your body is in the unfed state, after about 24 to 36 hours of the food passing through your digestive system, the body starts to not have fuel passing through the digestive tract, and it starts to utilize the food storages that are in the body. And so you kind of go into this protective state of rejuvenation, regeneration, and repair, as opposed to this growth state. So you have the body recognizes through different pathways, these nutrient sensing pathways or amino acid sensing pathways. When we eat food, there are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and fiber, and water, and other plant nutrients. And our body senses those compounds. They interact with our DNA and cause genes to express themselves in particular ways. And in the same way that sleeping well, exercise, stress, maneuvering through stressful experiences, or meditating seem to have a interplay on our genetic expression or epigenetics, the way that our DNA express themselves. If we eat a lot of burgers and fries and milkshakes, we're going to turn on certain pathways that that respond to that stress. If you're eating broccoli and kale and other whole plant foods, the body responds to those chemicals in a different way. So
Right.
when you go in a fasting state, you put yourself in a protective mode where, from an evolutionary standpoint, the body wants to protect its DNA so you could survive, to pass on your DNA and have progeny in that regards. And so you're able to protect that germ layer. You're able to protect even the DNA that's in our intestines, our microbiome. We end up kind of resetting even our microbiota flora. We recycle the proteins within our body and get those amino acids from misfolded proteins and damaged misfolded proteins that are in our cells. So fasting like puts your body in a protective state and rejuvenates you in the same way, and it's very similar pathways, biochemical pathways, that getting a good night's sleep does, that meditating does, or that exercise does.
Right.
It's working on very similar pathways. And so fasting is essentially putting your body in an unfed state.
Okay, so my question to you both is, how many hours of fasting shall a normal person do to get the benefit of, reversing chronic disease or reversing aging? I assume that it's different for what you're trying to achieve at the end, right?
So fasting, it could be maybe seen as a tool. It's a tool that could be applied depending on the individual. So it happens to be a dietary intervention that could help reverse a lot of pathways that kind of connect a lot of these chronic diseases together. So the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, the abdominal, truncal, visceral abdominal fat, the fat that surrounds our belly organs, the impaired response to insulin. When we eat carbohydrates, the body releases a hormone called insulin to get that blood sugar into our muscles and liver for storage for later. Those processes are imbalanced and result in chronic inflammation, chronic diseases like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, dementia. When we go into the fasting state, when we partake in a fast, we can not only tap into our own storage and stop some of those inflammatory processes that take place from these unhealthful foods that cause a lot of inflammation.
And that can be done in as little as not eating for 16 hours at a time. That can be done in as little as just doing 1 day a week, where you're having a significantly reduced calorie or no calories in a 24-hour period. And that's enough to stimulate some degree of healing. The evidence is quite clear that even reducing the number of hours you're eating every day, but to really turn on some significant bodily changes and enhance the body's ability to get rid of old, dead, decaying cells, the senescent cells, through a process of autophagy, it takes about 2 to 3 days to really turn that on. 2 to 3 days of putting the body into a low-fed or no-fed state.
Autophagy, which is meaning cellular cleanup, like the self-autophagy eat. So self-eat.
Right. Yeah, and that cellular cleanup usually starts at about day 2, day 3, and then maximizes over a couple of days. And that's where really controlling, what you're eating. And ideally, what used to be done is the total abstinence of all calorie, all food for that period of time. But there's been some really good scientific study that demonstrates if you eat a very select portion of foods at a very restricted caloric amount, you can turn on the effect of fasting, that autophagy 2 to 3 day time period, while still eating. And that's really where the magic happens, because it becomes much more easily attainable to reach that state of body cleansing if you can eat a little bit of something. If you can't eat anything, it becomes really hard to do a multi-day fast.
Right. Yes. So it makes it easier. It makes it easier to do. And then you also make so you make it more enjoyable, right? So you actually do it. And then you also, in order to reap the benefits, like the only way to reap benefits from exercise was to run 100 miles, no one would do it. So it does make
Right.
actually partaking in the fast more enjoyable, so you could reap the benefits of it. But then it also makes a fast safer. So when you're just on a water only fast, you can run into some issues depending on the individual. Let's say they're on blood pressure medicines or diabetic medications. They're not on those medications because they're deficient in those medications. They're on those medications to address imbalances in their body. And so when the body has an innate ability to heal, when you get out of the way and allow it to heal by not feeding it with some of the unhealthful foods and not being in a consistently fed state, your body is able to go into a healing mode, a repair, regenerative mode. It's able to use some of the damaged, cellular organs and turn on autophagy. And so you protect your gut lining, you feed the microbiome, you preserve your lean muscle, and you also don't pull on these levers to such an extreme and stress the body where you're having an effect where the body then says, wow, we're in an environment where there really isn't any food. We need to survive this ice age here. Let's really slow down our metabolism and go into a hibernation mode, right? And so that's something that could happen when they looked at Kevin Hall at the NIH, did some research with some of the people from The Biggest Loser. And they did extreme exercise and extreme dietary restriction. So they pulled on the lever for dietary restriction and they pulled on the lever for exercise, really extreme exercise. When they've looked at these cohorts of people that are really overweight and are able to lose weight, they seem to negatively impair their furnace, their basal metabolic rate, their metabolism to slow down. So if you slow down your metabolism even more, the little bit that you do eat your body becomes very efficient, at storing that food. So so a modified fast or applying fasting mimicry, where you're actually consuming certain foods to bypass these nutrient sensing pathways, bypass the carbohydrate pathways, bypass the amino acid protein pathways, you're able to trick your body into being in this unfed state or allowing some of these protective pathways, mTOR, IGF-1, PKA, FOXO genes, these different biochemical pathways that are involved with healing and inflammation and rejuvenation get turned on. But all the while you're providing your body with some nourishment and not having to tap into all of your muscle tissue and your bone tissue, and you're able to preserve your lean body mass and tap into that excess storage, your storage organ, which is fat, right? Like that is our storage organ, but the human body is kind of like a hybrid car. It doesn't just work off of just one type of gas. It works off a little bit of electric, right? It works off of some of the fat, but it also works on some of the carbohydrates, right? And that are stored in our body, and also some of the proteins to convert it into carbohydrates, gluconeogenesis.
Right. So my question to you, doctors, is how many days is something like this kind of fasting does one have to go on? I mean, you did say 3 days would be a maximum or something that you would suggest, but how many days are like recommended? And also, if this intermittent fasting is something that is productive or is not productive.
Right.
So I mentioned the 3 days. So it takes about 2 or 3 days to get the body genetically to the point where you begin to express genes that turn on healing pathways in the body. Just as if you experience stress on the feet, the first day of walking without shoes, you might get blisters or irritation, but after several days, the body gene expression creates a thick callus. So the same thing with the fasting. The first day or two, you're going to experience some hunger and change in metabolic activity, but really it takes about 3 days for the body to turn on some of those healing pathways. We recommend right now a 5-day period of doing a fast. The reason for that is you'll have several days of healing occur, but after about 5-6 days, the evidence points to a precipitous loss of muscle mass. And we want to maximize the healing, but decrease any loss of muscle mass.
And risk with prolonged fasting, right? There's overfeeding,
Right.
there's the refeeding syndrome.
So we usually have it's usually about a 5-day period that we recommend. With the intermittent fasting though, every day you could do some degree of fasting and get benefit. But unless you're under some sort of supervision, we don't recommend anything beyond about 5 days or so.
Yeah, so there's prolonged, or known as periodic fasting, and then there's which is done for longer, which is done for 2 days, right? 2 days or more. But time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting is done within a 24-hour period. And intermittent fasting kind of implies, so time restricted feeding is during that 24-hour time period, you wake up at 8 a.m. and then at 8 p.m. is 12 hours later. You have a 12-hour window where you could technically have your meals and eat. That is time restricted eating. That is time restricted feeding. If I was to, within that time restricted eating period, restrict the number of calories to say, hey, you're gonna not eat anything you want during that period, but you could eat during that time period, but also restrict the calories, that's also known as intermittent fasting. But we throw around this term, I'm fasting, and they're actually, time restricted eating, and they're not necessarily even intermittent fasting. But some of these are just, nomenclature, like that is somewhat, maybe for just communication purposes, sometimes with for a research study or something like that.
Right.
But so is intermittent fasting effective? It seems like if intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding could be effective if it's a tool that effectively allows, through that habit change, results in calorie restriction. You could eat just one meal a day, and, consume too many calories during that, 1 hour period that you're eating during the 24 hours, like an OMAD, 1 meal a day. Or if people do a 16-8, where they're fasting for 16 hours, but they have overriding their overnight fast, and then they have an 8-hour feeding window, they could potentially lose some weight, but it's more so just, they're not just eating all the time. And then you could potentially do things in your favor metabolically based on your daily rhythm, your circadian biological clock, by front-loading the calories, meaning putting them on earlier in the day. So eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. So if you take the same one meal a day at 8 p.m. and you eat, 2,000 calories at 8 p.m. versus at 8 a.m., the body at 8 a.m. is better primed at metabolizing that food. So your body responds to the insulin better, and burns the fuel more efficiently. So essentially the same meal in the evening is more fattening, more inflammatory, is going to raise certain markers of chronic disease like cholesterol, inflammatory markers, insulin levels eaten at night. So people are also kind of doing the intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, not in the most optimal way, where they're skipping out on breakfast. Skipping out on breakfast, based on some of the research, suggests that you're going to increase your risk of death and all cause and risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease. So it seems like when you look at the blue zones where people have these dietary patterns and lifestyles where they live the longest into their hundreds, they're not skipping out on breakfast, and their time restricted eating or intermittent fasting is really done on a 12-12.
With that being said, they're not eating, sausage and egg and cheese sandwiches in the morning. They're
Right.
eating, a diet that's high in plants. They're eating a diet that's high in fiber. They're eating a diet that's primarily calorie restricted. So in the grand scheme of things, really, if you look at your typical diet, you're able to influence your genetic expression with every single thing that you put into your body. Anytime that your body interacts with our environment, whether it's cigarette smoking, whether it's sunburn, whether it's lifting weights, eating food, we're constantly causing some degree of genetic response, genetic expression. And across the board, it's good to understand that keeping your caloric restriction low, keeping your exposure to fiber and plant-based foods high has a really positive effect. And it's hard to say like, oh, well, you know what, I'm going to do some intermittent fasting, and I'm going to eat 6 eggs and 4 sausage biscuits in the morning. I'm going to have 9 hot dogs at lunch, but I'm going to skip dinner. I can assure you that you're probably going to be better off eating whole food plants from noon to 8 than eating, McDonald's from 8 a.m., to noon. So, with that being said, it's an all-encompassing, lifestyle change that really makes the biggest, bang for your buck, the biggest input into how our genetic code is being expressed on a regular daily basis.
Okay. So from what I'm understanding, the time-restricted diet or intermittent fasting, doing so on a low caloric intake, eating healthily as possible, would that also give a chance for the cell to regenerate?
Yes,
A little bit.
it will.
And you're going to just doing it for more than a day, like, is going to just yield a different effect. It's giving them, like, these are not like just on-off switches that just happen automatically. It takes time for some of these pathways to flip and change your metabolism. It's not like just overnight you can just go into ketosis per se. Some people are metabolically primed, or they have the metabolic, agility, because they've stressed their system in a particular way in the past, so their body is able to do it more efficiently. There are some people genetically that don't ever go into ketosis, right? Like, they have protective mechanisms in their body from an evolutionary standpoint where it's very difficult for their body to go into ketosis, or it blocks it. So it varies, and ketosis is just one of the markers that suggests that you're, that you're not burning carbohydrates, you're burning fat for fuel, and it's an indication, one of the indicators of being in the unfed state. It's not
right. But even just a little bit, every day will help the body to begin its regenerative process, even if you're not entirely and fully into a fasting state, by changing your lifestyle and following a lot of the different lifestyle changes that we're promoting through, the Dr. Q longevity and the Dr. Q fast. Even if you just want to engage a little bit, you will have a restorative and regenerative effect to the body. There's a significant degree of health improvement that comes from reducing belly fat. It helps your insulin sensitivity. That has a positive effect. Reducing your exposure to foods that create a toxic environment at a cellular and intracellular level also has a regenerative effect. So if you're not going all the way to the end and doing 5 days, like we recommend to do on a very periodic basis, you don't want to do a full cleaning and scrubbing of the car and wash the mats. Just going through the car wash helps a bit, and that's as much as you can make of a change, we encourage you to make. More is better, but a little bit is good.
Yeah, the 5 days is kind of like a balanced approach. It's like, it's long enough to yield an effect, to keep it safe, and not really pull on someone's willpower to the nth degree, where it's like 5 days is a short enough commitment where it's balanced on all of those, checks there, of all those things that we're trying to check with, like those 5 days is kind of like a sweet spot. It's
right.
longer than those 2 days. It gives like a full 3 days where you're stressing the system enough. You know, in the same way, it's like you can get results just doing 1 push-up, and you can get results from doing 20 push-ups, and you can get results doing maybe 3 sets of 20 like every other day, not just 3 sets once a month. And so if someone is overweight, 70% of the population is overweight. If someone has diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they have difficulty getting an erection because of their cardiovascular disease. They don't eat perfectly all the time. They overeat sometimes. They're dining out. You're eating some standard American, diet. Sometimes, restricting your calories for a set period of time is not within it goes against our instincts. And so this is a way to have a program that kind of provides the structure to encourage us to do what we know to do, but we don't always do what we know to do because it goes against our instincts.
Right. So that is the reason why you guys came up with this Dr. Q fast for that 5-day curated or customized kit for someone who needs the accountability, who doesn't know how to fast. And maybe this is like an introduction to someone who wants to try fasting. Please tell us a little bit about your Q fast kit.
I mean, like you could fast with water, but again, after about 2 days, the body has then kind of gone into a fasting state. Remember, about 24, 36 hours later, 1.5 to 2 days later, your body has all the food pass through the digestive tract. After 2 days, 90% of people back out of a water fast. Partaking in these modified fasts myself, it's like day 1, oh, this is super easy. Day 2, your body starts recognizing that it's in an unfed state, and your appetite and hunger cravings and addictions or affinities for to just be in the fed state start talking to you.
So the Dr. Q fast helps to alleviate a lot of those stressors that he was talking about by providing you one, foods that you like. It's a customized program, and we have a couple of dozen different foods on there, and you pick which ones you like and which ones you don't like. And we customize your diet over 5 days based around foods that you already have an affinity for. In addition, we have whole food bars in there. Bars tend to be enjoyable, and most people it's just a grab and go. We also utilize a product that we call the Fast Fuel, which is a powdered product that has a lot of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that helps to offset some of the difficulty, the craving, the hunger, and some of the energy loss that comes with fasting.
And also turn on the autophagy, right?
It definitely helps to turn on those pathways so that they're more effective during the time you're eating. And then the non-material portion of the kit is that accountability, that coaching, and the direction that tells you this is how you do it. And just like with buttoning a button as a small child or learning how to ski down a slope, the more that you do something, the easier it becomes, and it integrates into your lifestyle changes. So by following the method for 5 days, it changes your taste buds, it changes some of those cravings. We have a master class that accompanies the Dr. Q fast that shows you what foods that you should be eating in higher quantities, which foods you should be eating in lower quantities. And over time, we see a lifestyle change. And if you're better by next week, that's great. But if it takes you 6 months to get better, it doesn't matter 3 years from now. As long as you're attaining consistently progressive improvement, we help move you toward that direction through our masterclass and through doing the Dr. Q fast. And once you've done it with us a couple of times, you can do it on your own. It doesn't take much to do it. It's just a matter of training the body to get it done. And that's really what's in the kit.
And then also we also have the metabolic health tracker.
Totally forgot to mention that.
Yeah. So fasting from a medical perspective has been around since Hippocrates, the father of medicine, since Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food, right? And also talked about the concept, if the body is sick, to perpetually feed the body the wrong foods, or to be in the unfed state, gives the body an opportunity of kind of getting out of the way and letting some of those healing mechanisms take place. And a lot of these chronic diseases that we see are essentially representations, or the body manifesting in different ways a disease that's caused through dietary excess. It just manifests differently depending on the individual and a lot of different factors. So this metabolic health tracker is a way where it's a home collection kit where just like if you were checking your finger stick blood sugars with a finger stick, you drop 4 drops of blood on a device and send it out in the mail. And we're able to track certain markers of lifestyle, of markers of chronic disease, or markers of metabolism. So we're able to very comfortably and seamlessly from your home measure your visceral abdominal fat, measure your cardiovascular risk through a lipid profile, measure your insulin resistance through some of the ratios of some of these numbers, measure your measure markers of inflammation through a highly sensitive C-reactive protein, HSCRP. We can measure oxidative stress through and liver health through an enzyme called GGT. We're able to measure your average hemoglobin, your average blood sugars through a hemoglobin A1C. And so when you're doing this device, when you're partaking in the Dr. Q fast, you actually have some objective markers that are not only you're able to see the effect of the fast, and track your results, but with each subsequent fast, you get this kit and you can see where you're at, because the Dr. Q fast could be done theoretically on a monthly basis for the individual that just wants to promote their health, and because they live in a modern day environment where there is dietary excess. And so this is a way to kind of reset in a manner that isn't so challenging and difficult, and it is science backed, and you have physicians supporting you like through the platform. But it's also something that could be done on a monthly basis for the individual that has a chronic disease, and could utilize this as a tool alongside, and then also instilling how to eat healthfully after the Dr. Q fast, because you're actually using food, real food that you should be eating, not just during the fast, but also after the fast, without restriction, with more variety and with more abundance, and some of the other foods that maybe we don't have in excess, like a purple potato or a sweet potato or some whole grains that kind of end up adding too many calories and take you out of the fasting state.
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing, and easy if you follow the kit and, go through the master class. And that the testing that you were saying sounds really, really, really great. I mean, I think everybody wants to go through and learn about their levels and where they could use or lose in, some of the areas of their, bodies or their lives.
Yeah.
And it provides a solution. It's not like, here are these lab values, we'll eat healthy and sleep more and exercise more. It's like, here's some specific, a tangible thing that you could do in just 5 days on a monthly basis, and kind of
see the results.
What you know to do. What's that, David?
And really see the results by tracking what you're doing. I mean, we like to track so many things in our environment. I have a wearable. I know Dr. Evan has a wearable. So many people have wearables to track what's going on in their lifestyle. Why not track your health? I'm going to track my gas mileage in my car. Might as well track the gas mileage in my heart.
Yeah, if you monitor it, you can manage it. And so, and that's the other thing. With a fast, it's like you get results quickly. You get results very quickly, and it also kind of gets your body set up for after the fast. So you're getting results even when you're done.
Right. Yeah. So, oh my God, this has been so great, but we're going to have to wrap it up. And On our description, we will add everything under Dr. Q longevity, Dr. Q fast, and the doctors are giving away, giving us a safe fast discount of $110 for those of you who want to enjoy the Dr. Q fast. Thank you, doctor, so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh, you're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.